welcome to the Week 12 edition of the Monster Pod here on Lineups. Matt Brown, Noops Christensen, running through each and every NFL game, all of our bets, all of our leans, any props we got in there, and of course, any games we absolutely hate, we will let you know about that as well. Everything we do here on the channel is absolutely free, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Let us know in the comment sections, because you love to let us know all of our stuff that you like. So, all the stuff you love, just let us know in the comment section. Obviously, none of the bad stuff that you want to share down there with all of that. I come to you from a cold, rainy Las Vegas today. I'm cranky over here, Noops. I'm telling you, this is like we went from 80 to 50 just like that, and it's just no good whatsoever. But we, nonetheless, I will persevere here through this podcast. And as we start with the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road at the Chicago Bears, this is 2.5 in favor of the Bears at home, so we're under that critical number of 3 as we record this. 45.5 to 46 is our total. That said, Noops, there are some 115s on those 2.5s that are out there, so maybe we see a bit more Chicago love whenever we get absolute confirmation on who's playing quarterback for the Steelers.
Yeah, I think that obviously makes the biggest difference here, and it's not even just because Aaron Rodgers has been playing so well. Mason Rudolph is not the guy. We've seen him. He's good in mop-up duty from time to time, but you don't want him starting here. And as bad as that Bears defense is, they can stop the run. And again, Mason Rudolph's not going to be pushing the ball down the field. So have to wait to see if Rodgers is playing. If you have any interest in the Steelers, who are kind of in a must-win game here. Now, they're still 6-4, but they lose this game here. Then it's Buffalo, at Baltimore. They host Miami, at Detroit, at Cleveland, and then they host Baltimore again. I mean, it's just an absolutely brutal finish to the schedule. So if they can't win this game, I think you're looking for a lot of trouble with Detroit. So I think they'll probably push Rodgers to play. But even if they do, I continue to be impressed with this Bears team. I've gone back and watched their last 4 or 5 games, and I know a lot of close wins against teams that aren't necessarily great, but the passing offense has been really solid, despite Caleb Williams maybe holding on to the ball a little more than you'd want. They are pretty solid, even from DVOA numbers. They look pretty good there. So I think if I had to count on anything, I think the Bears are going to be able to move this ball against the Steelers defense. The question is, will Rodgers be there, and can he move the ball against a questionable Bears defense? So lean over, and I still lean towards the Bears, but just too much unknown with the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I also pretty decent lean towards the Bears, but wasn't able to get it into the account. I don't really like either one of these teams, but one of the things I do like is what Ben Johnson's been doing here lately. I can tell that he's starting to get it, Noops, like you're talking about. Like, I can tell that the newness is starting to wear off a little bit towards him. What we saw last week was they replaced Zacchaeus with Luther Burden. Luther Burden ran in 100% of 3 wide receiver sets for them. He is obviously the more explosive player, the more dynamic player, and maybe just took him a little bit longer being a rookie to get, his legs underneath him. But I think that is a big bonus here for this team, especially considering it seems like DJ Moore is, I don't know, maybe falling off a little bit with all of that. And so certainly getting Luther Burden down the field, I think is much better. Getting Monangai's quality snaps, I think, was a smart move on his part as well. I like much more about the Bears than I do about Pittsburgh. And for whatever reason, I can't seem to get it in the account. And so when that's the case, I usually just pass on those games. But man, I'll put it this way. I'm never taking the points with Pittsburgh. It would only be laying them with Chicago.
Oh, absolutely. I think, if somehow this got up to 3.5 with Rodgers in, which it won't, maybe you consider it, but 2.5 is a pretty dead number here. Again, it's Bears or pass.
New York Football Jets are on the road at Baltimore. This is 13.5 in favor of the Ravens at home. 44.5 is our total here in this one. Anytime we see a double-digit spread, yes, survivor implications will be on that game. And so decent amount of people will be on the Ravens here in this one, including this guy right here. So go Lamar Jackson. I got push notification right before we went live here, Noops, that he practiced in full again today. So, it seems like maybe Lamar, given the way that he plays, he is at least getting a little bit older. I know he's still in his 20s, but he's been in the league for a while now. Maybe Wednesdays are just going to be rest days for him. Like we got a little concern last 2 Wednesdays were both DNPs, and we're like, oh boy, here we go again. But then he comes out and he fulls, on Thursday and Friday. So maybe that's just going to be the pattern here with Lamar. Jets make the move to Tyrod Taylor. Does that matter to you?
Not without any position receiver, pass catchers for him to throw the ball to. It's just a mess. Without Garrett Wilson, you've got Adonai Mitchell, who is great at running routes and getting open, but struggles at that crucial final step of catching the ball here. So
that thing that he's getting paid to do is, that's the hard part. Yeah.
I wonder if, you're a coach, what I would probably do is let's get him some short stuff. Instead of making him run down the field for 45-yard highlight drops, let's get him the ball in space a little bit, see if we can get his confidence back. But it's just a spot where the Ravens should absolutely mash this team. They need to win, but they know that they don't need to play their best football here. I think what we're seeing with Lamar is maybe not just even his age, but kind of his football age, if you will. He's taken a lot of hits. He's gets injured a lot the way he's played. And again, the Ravens offensive line is not as good as it once was. So I agree. It makes sense to me that they rest him. I have no doubts about him playing this game. But again, Baltimore, do they have to really bring out their best stuff? Have to win this game, but do you really need to push hard with Cincinnati coming in next week and then Pittsburgh? You've got some division games coming up. Again, should be favored there, but maybe Burrow's back. Do you need to really absolutely unleash on this Jets squad that has actually looked a little bit better since trading everyone away? Maybe just everyone in the locker room's terrified for their jobs and playing absolutely out of their heads so they don't get cut. But it's Ravens or pass. I just don't feel great that we're going to get their very best effort. And that's what you need to win this game by 2 touchdowns.
Talk me through this, because I kind of feel like the play for me in this one, and this is one that I wanted to wait and put in the account after I talked to you about it here, was an under 44.5. So I think this total is where it's at because they're using the season-long totals on Baltimore's defense as opposed to what we've seen kind of over the last 3 or 4 weeks where they got healthy, because they were just completely, they were out there with a shell of a team for the first half of the season. Now they got everybody back out there. Even if the Ravens score 27 in this, we're still needing a decent amount from the Jets to get this thing to 45 points. I'm struggling with how we get there, even with the switch to Tyrod Taylor, because like you said, there's no talent on the Jets. There's just there's nobody there. So I see a lot of I see a lot of outcomes where they score 10, 13, in this game or whatever, and that doesn't get us there if the Ravens score 27,
Yeah, I think you just keep it simple. Why don't you just play a Jets team total under? I'm seeing 15.5 for the Jets. You could probably get under 14.5 at plus money if you search around somewhere. And I think that's the best way to do it, because not only do you have a chance for the Ravens to score points on offense, they might score points on defense. Tyrod Taylor is not shy about throwing the ball. If you get a couple turnovers, it could be a really tough spot where you nailed the handicap. The Jets only scored 13, 14 points, but the Ravens defense gets a score. The Ravens offense is just running away with it late. And, you're stuck with a ticket in your hand where, again, you kind of nailed the angle. So let me suggest a Jets team total under instead.
New York Football Giants on the road at Detroit. This is 12.5, 13 in favor of Detroit. 50 is the prevailing total, though you can find 149.5 and you can find a 50.5 as well. So this sitting 10.5 yesterday, all the way up to 12.5, 13 today, because it does not look like Jackson Dart's going to go, I guess, is what the market is telling us here, Noops. And so, again, another double-digit spread, another good survivor play if you have Detroit left and you don't have to save Detroit for any of the holiday weeks and all of that, another very, very solid play. The thing that we have seen about Detroit, yes, they went out and lost last week, but it was against one of the best defenses in the NFL. They throttle bad defenses. And so this is a bad defense for the Giants. It's almost a name your score type deal, I think, for Detroit back at home against this defense.
Just a brutal spot for the Giants, who will be without Jackson Dart. He was announced out about an hour or so ago, still going through concussion protocol. And honestly, I think it's pretty smart, because the way this Bengals defense plays, and as much as the Giants offensive line has struggled, you put him back out here, he might get hurt again. If you're the Giants, you really got to, handle him with kid gloves. I'm expecting we'll see Jameis here, but like you said, the Lions coming off a loss. Every single stat about this is truly impressive. They're undefeated off a loss since 2023. There's something in one against the spread with some huge, huge numbers. They just absolutely crushed teams. And as the way the Giants' run defense has been so poor, I think the Lions could do whatever they want. I think this is a game where you might have the rare double 100-yard game from Montgomery, who they've talked about getting the ball more, from Gibbs, who could get 100 yards and 10 carries in this game. It's just a spot where I love the Lions here. I don't understand why this line isn't closer to 13.5, 14.5. Was looking at 10.5 earlier, though. Actually, now that I think about it, let me just double check. Yeah, out to 12.5 here. I think with Jameson, it honestly should be more than 14. So whatever Lions number you got in front of you, as long as it's less than 2 touchdowns, I think they throttle New York this week.
There's a market low of 59.5 on Jameson Williams from a receiving total. Since Dan Campbell took over play calling 2 weeks ago, Jameson has gotten 21% target share. Announced today that Sam Laporta is not going to be back for the rest of the season. I think this is where Jameson Williams, we're kind of getting the post hype breakout thing here with Jameson Williams, but I think Dan Campbell realizes he doesn't just have to run go routes and he can run normal routes out there. And so this was 57.5 earlier in the week. I have no problem with 59.5 at all on Jameson Williams, but I do think that this is Dan Campbell is a player's coach, and he is going to put up a bunch of points in this game. Like they go and they struggle mightily against the Eagles and all that. It's like, this is 35 plus here from the Lions. And so I think Jameson Williams is a big part of that.
Couldn't agree more. And it's a thing where you'd expect teams in blowouts would maybe give their best players a blow. Dan Campbell doesn't do that. We saw him at the end of last season push his guys hard in a game they didn't really need to win. We've seen him in blowouts this year, make sure Gibbs gets 2-3 touchdowns, get Jameson, get Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I don't think there's any wrong way to play this game as long as you're playing Lions and Lions player prop overs.
So Noops, one kind of macro thing I want to bring up here, just so that in case we see it over the next several weeks, was Dan Campbell took a little bit of heat last week. One of the things we've praised him on is making the right decisions and optimizing his chances of winning. And where a lot of guys would punt, he understands it increases his win probability to go for it. And a lot of times people would kick a field goal and he would go for a touchdown and all the different stuff like that. Well, there were some pretty questionable calls. He's an aggressive dude. There were some pretty questionable calls last week with all of that. And it got me to thinking was, when you're out there and you're calling plays, like you are sitting thinking the entire time about, okay, if we get there, what's the next play I'm going to call? If we get the first down, what's going to happen here? What am I going to do? You're doing that. When you're just standing on the sideline and someone else is calling plays, you can start thinking about if we're going to go for it, if this happens, we'll probably punt it if this happens. We'll probably whatever. But he's now having to make those decisions like in a couple of seconds, as opposed to be able to kind of think out what's going on. And I'm not saying that calling plays is going to make Dan Campbell less sharp or that it's going to make him botch calls more often, but it is something that I'm at least going to watch over the next few weeks and see if there's a couple more of these where we go, that was very un-Dan Campbell-like to do that. And maybe there is some sort of correlation with his new responsibilities.
I think it's a great thing to put a pin in, and we've already seen this affect another team. Matt LaFleur took over play calls for the Packers, and we saw several times in that game his back turned to the field while he's working through the play sheet as opposed to seeing what's going on. And like you said, it doesn't make Dan Campbell any less good at making these decisions. He's just going to be less prepared. Again, you've only got so much time. You've only got so much ability to pay attention to so many things. And the more you put on your plate, the more other things suffer. So I like this angle. It's definitely something we should pay attention to.
New England Patriots are on the road at the Cincinnati Bengals. This is sitting 51.5 in favor of, that's what on total. 7 is the prevailing total spread out there on New England. This got down to 5.5 yesterday. On New England, I wasn't planning on betting this game, and then it got under 6, and I had to because, 1, I don't think Joe Burrow is going to play anyway. 2, even if he does, there's no Jamar Chase. And it's still a horrific defense. And 3, you have one of the, I think at this point we can't really doubt him. Like, you have one of the top 10 teams in the NFL coming into town going up against this team. I couldn't believe that people were on the speculation that Burrow might get back out there, deciding to come in and pound Cincinnati without Jamar Chase. I think the only thing you love, Noops, about Cincinnati, isn't it that it's Jamar Chase and he has 2 awesome weapons, and even if the defense sucks, they might be able to score 42 and just outscore you or whatever. But without Jamar, I just don't know if that's really the handicap.
Yeah, if you told me that Burrow was prepared to play this game and Jamar Chase was playing, I'd understand it.
Yeah.
The Patriots defense is built around stopping the run. They've actually been mediocre to below league average against the pass. And again, with everything working for the Bengals, I can see it. But I just have no idea. I tend to agree with you. Burrow probably doesn't play, but has practiced in full the last 2 days. And we know that Joe Flacco's dealing with a shoulder injury. So it just seems like one of the strangest spots of the week. I think probably the thing I can count on here best is the Bengals defense is bad. The Patriots are going to score points and control this game. So what does that look like for Mike Vrabel? Does he really give Drake May an opportunity to air the ball out? Should we be playing Drake May passing yard alt overs? Should we be looking at longest reception for every Patriots player and trying to play those? Or does Vrabel look at this and go, let's just grind this out. We can run the ball as much as we want against this team, and let's just get out of here before anything goofy happens. So just way too much unknown for me. Again, expect to see Flacco here. I'm not sure it makes that big of a difference if Burrow's in. Again, first game back after a long break. It does seem like they're rushing him back a little early with this foot injury. And, we know how NFL players are, especially on defense. There's going to be guys trying to step on his foot the entire game. So I think it's going to be tough for this Bengals team. Thought about maybe an over, but again, just don't know if I can trust the Bengals offense to be good in whatever situation we see. And the Patriots team total over 28.5 was close to a bet, really wanted 27.5. So kind of think New England's the way to go here, but I mean, this game is probably the biggest unknown of the week.
Yeah, I'm with you. It seems like Cincinnati with Burrow was going to be a dead over team, but that was also with the handicap that Jamar Chase was going to be out there. I've seen enough drops from Yoshivas to know that it's just pretty big difference between him and Jamar Chase. So I don't, even if, like I said, even if Joe's out there, I don't know if that's something I'm too interested in. Seattle and Tennessee, another double-digit spread, another survivor team here in the Seahawks going on the road to the worst team in the NFL. 40.5 is our total here in this one. It's all the way out to 13.5 at a couple of the books. You can find 13, the majority of places out there, Noops. Seattle, tough loss last week to the Rams. We're still in it despite Darnold throwing 4 picks. If there was a get-right spot, it's probably against Tennessee.
This looks like, again, just a nightmare spot for the Tennessee Titans, who have had a season full of nightmare spots. You've got Cam Ward, who's, again, from time to time I see flashes. I really hope they can get this guy some coaching in the offseason and maybe some little more talent to be around to let him grow. But this is not the week that's going to really be for him. We've seen the Seahawks defense absolutely torture quarterbacks all season. And it's a spot, honestly, where, Matt, I wonder if the Seahawks defense can score more points than the Titans offense in this game. So it's just going to be a really rough spot. I'm not sure why this line is below 2 touchdowns. I am just a little concerned that the market has been scooping up Titans plus 13.5. I don't get it. Give me the Seahawks here, minus 13, minus 13.5. Again, it's another spot where coming off a loss, we're going to get the best effort from this team, and there's no reason for me to expect them not to throttle the Titans today.
Yeah, and this just comes out. Xavier Woods out for the Titans, and then Elick Iomanor, who has actually become their number 1 receiver because Calvin Ridley also out for the season. Iomanor is out for them as well. So, I mean, it's just like a bad team is even worse because they're going to imagine how bad your 3rd and 4th string guys are if they're this bad, if your 1st strings are in there. And so that's kind of where we're at with this. Typically in the NFL, I see big spreads. I'm always looking to take the dog. This is one of those games where I'm on the opposite side of that. I would only lay it with Seattle. Like you said, that defense alone, we saw all we have to do is look last week. Tennessee couldn't do anything against the Texans. Seattle's defense is right up there at the top of the league with the Texans, with the Eagles, with these, it's a top 5 unit. And so I don't expect Tennessee to have any more success against Seattle than they did last week, except you bring a much, much better offense in with Seattle than you get with the Texans. So yeah, I would only lay it, which it's crazy in the NFL for me to say I'd only lay 13 and not take it, but that's where I'm at.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. Again, everything here, this would be a spot where had Seattle won that game against the Rams, maybe it's a little bit of a letdown spot. They're looking ahead to some of the rest of their games, patting themselves on the back. But after that performance, after that loss, and again, if Iomanor is out, which you just said he is, I mean, good Lord, what's Cam Ward going to do out there? If it was a fight, you'd probably throw the flag, throw the towel.
Minnesota Vikings on the road at the Green Bay Packers. This is 6.5 in favor of the Packers at home. 41.5 is our total. If you got eyeballs out there, guys, you have seen what J.J. McCarthy has put out on the field so far. I understand small sample size, and we have seen people get better, obviously, but currently If we go to our friends over at PFF Noops, which we do from time to time, and these player grades aren't the end all be all, but it does at least give you a snapshot of kind of the company. If you go and you put in like a qualifier of just minimum amount of dropbacks, the only players below J.J. McCarthy are Jake Browning and Carson Wentz, who are no longer quarterbacking in the NFL. So Jake Browning and Carson Wentz, the only two that are worse than J.J. McCarthy, according to our friends over at Pro Football Focus. So it's a tough click if you want to take the Vikings, is all I can say. I mean, but the problem is that the Packers just play down to their competition. Like they refuse to go out and throttle the bad teams. Hell, they've actually lost to a couple of the bad teams.
It's a situation where I'm just always disappointed in a lot of the discourse that we have about quarterbacks. Saying that J.J. McCarthy is bad doesn't mean he can't eventually be good. It means he's bad this week. He's bad this season. I think he definitely needs an offseason to work on his mechanics. I think his understanding of the game flow, watch him call pass protections and changing plays at the line, that's all been solid. But if you go and watch how long it takes him to load up and how much of his body he's using to throw this ball, it just looks really uncomfortable, and something where just needs an off season with his quarterback coach, really just working on that mechanic and making that throw easier. Then we'll kind of see what they can do. This is a must-win game for the Packers. If the Packers lose this game, they are in very, very serious danger of missing the playoffs and might honestly just effectively be out. And it's a situation where you look at Green Bay, Josh Jacobs' status really matters here. Now, they don't need him to win this game, but they need to win this game, and having him was going to help quite a bit. So are they going to make the mistake of maybe pushing him a little too soon and getting him injured for this game that they've got coming up on the following Thursday that's going to be really important? So it's a spot where I've been looking at playing the under, but we still have two offenses that love to push the ball down the field. And again, with the wide receivers that are going to be on the field for Minnesota, for the general offense for Green Bay, that has still been pretty good despite, again, missing some guys. I just can't bring myself to bet it. It's under or pass. This is a game where I'm just going to watch and, again, try to figure out what Green Bay is.
Same. I mean, it's probably a team that, because I think they win the game, so it's probably a team that I'm going to have to be handicapping come playoff time. And I need to know if this is just going to be an instant fade for me with Green Bay. I mean, if this defense can't go out with what J.J. McCarthy's doing currently and put up a dominant showing, and then the offense just actually plays for 60 minutes instead of going on these 20-minute lulls that we get every single game with this Green Bay offense, then I'm going to be out on this Packers team. I'm kind of already out. I'm like 1 foot out as it is anyway, but I think I'm going to be completely out. There's just too much. You can only play with your food for so long, and I think the Green Bay Packers are one of the prime examples as to if you do it for too long, what ends up happening to you, and you find yourself in must-win games that you shouldn't be. You should not be in this situation. This team should not be in this situation at all. Indianapolis is on the road at Kansas City, the game of the week, I would assume, in most people's eyes, as the Colts, coming out of a bye, will be 3.5-point dogs against the Kansas City Chiefs. 50 is a prevailing total, though you can find as low as 49.5 and as high as 50.5. So here it is. We get this Kansas City Chiefs team lose outright to the Broncos. Indianapolis coming off of a bye. Daniel Jones, by the way, practiced in full the last 2 days, so that whole thing on Wednesday. Again, I think some of these teams just don't mess around with these injury reports. You don't want to worry about it. If a guy has to get treatment after, they'll go ahead and put him on the injury report or whatever. But apparently Daniel Jones, good to go for Indy here. Noops. Coming out of a bye, 2 weeks to prepare for Kansas City in Kansas City.
It's a situation where, again, Kansas City, I said last week, they had to either beat Denver or beat Indianapolis. Well, they didn't beat Denver. They've got to beat Indianapolis, or else you fall to 5-6. You're a couple games out. It could be even worse depending on how some of these other games go. It really is a high leverage week in terms of playoffs. So take a look at those odds and really consider those while you're playing some of these bets. But Kansas City just looks bored. They don't look sharp. You watched that game last week, and I went back and rewatched it. I still can't figure out how they lost. I mean, Mahomes throws that really bad interception, but they're still in control, and just the whole thing starts to, kind of unwind here. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to the fact that we're used to the Chiefs having a really good defense, especially in big moments, and we have not seen that from them all season. And I don't know what they're going to do against the best offense in the NFL this season that, again, has had 2 weeks coming off a bye, prepared for this game. So I think
and Noops, by the way, it's going to be 60 degrees with no wind. It's like you don't even get Kansas City weather to work in your favor against a dome team. It's going to be 60 with no wind. It's going to be perfectly fine.
Exactly. This should be a great spot for Indianapolis. Their team total is 23.5, which just boggles my mind. And again, I think it just speaks to the way the market feels about this Kansas City defense versus kind of what I've seen. And when I look at through some of the numbers here, I think it's a really overrated unit. So I'm going to play the Colts to score over 23.5 points. I think they can win this game and cover, but it's backs against the wall for the Chiefs. I'm just not ready. And again, maybe I'm too mired in history and what I've seen over the past few years to go against Mahomes and read in this situation, but it feels like the Colts can win this game.
Yeah, there was a 4 earlier in the week. No real difference in 3.5 and 4. So I think the Colts side is the side here for me. A little reminder for everybody out there, since they did go on by. This will now be week 3 of Sauce Gardner being in the defense over there. So learning much more, going in, understanding the philosophy and how to do things. And they get back Charvarius Ward, which that is in and of itself now makes this what was a massive weakness for this team. Arguably the best cornerback tandem in the entire NFL when you have Sauce Gardner and Charvarius Ward out on the field together. Sauce Gardner, 73.7% lockdown rate this year, which means guys did not get what would be called separation on him. He is 8 points better than the next closest guy in that stat. And now you put in Charvarius Ward, who is a very, very good corner in and of himself. You look at these. There was I love all you internet wizards out there, by the way, and I reference some of the stuff that you put out sometimes, and I really got to start writing down who this is from. Someone put out a scatter chart of Patrick Mahomes versus man coverage this year versus Patrick Mahomes over the last few years. It is night and day, Noops. Like, they're just not getting open for. They're either not getting open for him, or he's not making the throws, or something. Something along there is happening, because incompletions abound in man coverage for Mahomes this year, where that was not the case over the last several seasons. You could start to point. Kelsey's a year older, maybe a step slower. Maybe, having Tyreek Hill those years in the past, like, he was obviously could be a guy that could just torch man coverage. And also, like, there's a lot of things you could point to, but neither here nor there. This Chiefs offense, I don't think anyone's going to argue, is not near as good as it has been in years past. And I think there's a couple of different reasons to point to that. And that's that these dudes aren't really getting a ton of separation against man coverage, and in comes what I consider to be maybe the best cornerback tandem in all the NFL. I don't know what you change here, man. Like, I think the Colts on the other side of a field goal is a very, very good bet. Even if the Chiefs win, this certainly feels like a field goal game to me.
It is, and I think the big problem with the Chiefs offense, you touched on it when you mentioned Tyreek Hill, they're just not sending anybody over the top of defenses. They're not getting a lot of respect. The guys like Tyquan Thornton is probably the fastest player they have. Defenses don't care about him. They leave one quarterback out there. He's not going to stretch a safety out, move linebackers. Xavier Worthy really hasn't popped the way he did last year. And as good as Rashee Rice is, again, more of a possession receiver. So I wonder if a lot of that comes down to there's just not as much space in a lot of those plays. And you look, another thing I saw, and again, apologies to whoever posted this, I should be able to remember your name. Mahomes isn't really throwing the ball kind of intermediate. It's a lot of short stuff, occasionally some deep things down the throw, but just not finding the stuff 15, 20, 25 yards down the field where they had a lot of success in the past. So again, we'll see. It's a really tough spot if Charvarius Ward can play and Gardner is finally comfortable here. It could quietly be a really tough day for this Chiefs team.
Jacksonville Jaguars on the road at the Arizona Cardinals. This is 2.5, 3 in favor of Jacksonville. 47.5 is our total. Of course, it will be Jacoby Brissett again this week, and Marvin Harrison will not be out there again this week for Arizona. Could it be another Michael Wilson week after his monster explosion last week of 15 for 185? We said take the over on 40. I'm so dumb. 44.5. I meant ladder it up to 180, guys, is what I meant to do. That's what I meant to say on the podcast last week. I mean, the ticket's cash regardless, but still, that would have been a nice little boost to the bankroll there. There was some hope that Trey Benson was going to be back for this game, but Noops, literally, as I'm walking in the door, they had elevated someone off the practice squad and whatever for Arizona. So that kind of leads me to believe he's not going to be activated. So maybe another week waiting on Trey Benson to be back in there for Arizona. And it looks like their running back tandem in Jacksonville certainly starting to find some footing here, starting to figure things out. Tootin seems to be a very nice compliment there to ATN. And it's kind of needed because I'm still not a believer in Trevor Lawrence. What do you think about this one? This is an interesting game for sure.
I think this is one of the hardest games to handicap of the
Yeah.
week, possibly for the last couple weeks, because are we ready to trust the Jaguars finally? I know they beat up on the
Mm.
Chargers, but the Chargers are kind of a mess. Are we ready to fade this Arizona team that, again, the numbers on them aren't spectacular, but they look solid. Again, the offense is moving the ball even without Marvin Harrison out there. The defense has been okay. I'm surprised that this isn't 3.5. I've been so surprised that this line has been so solidly around 3 with Jacksonville. Again, kind of coming off that big win. I think maybe the easiest way to play this is the over. Again, I think the Jaguars' run game is going to be able to have success against the Cardinals, which, to your point, keeps the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands, which is probably best for the Jaguars' offense. And Brissett has led a pretty solid offense here, regardless of who the running backs have been and who the receivers are. So the Jaguars' defense doesn't inspire me. I think the easy bet here is over, but again, I just have too many questions about either of these teams. I don't feel like I have a good rating on either, so I'll let this one go.
I think Jacoby Brissett played his way into being the starter for the Jets next year as they bridge to like the 2027 draft, where they're probably going to hold out for Arch Manning or one of these other guys. I don't think they're going to pull the trigger this year on one of these quarterbacks. And so I think Brissett has played just good enough to be the bridge quarterback over there for the Jets, and we'll see what happens there with that one. Cleveland is coming out here to Las Vegas. It is a very low 36.5 point total with a spread of 3.5 or 4 in favor of Las Vegas. And Noops, I guess my question to you is, from what we've seen from this Vegas team over the last month, even with it being Shedeur Sanders starting for Cleveland, are they 4 points better than anybody in the NFL?
I have just so many questions about this game. Again, Shedeur Sanders is coming in. This was one of my favorite things I saw. Again, apologies, I can't remember who put this out, but he's going to be the 18th starting quarterback for the Browns since a certain period of time. The last 17 have all lost their debut. Can he possibly break that streak? Could this be a game where we don't see any touchdowns? You've got a Browns defense that is pretty good. Now, they haven't been as good on the road against the Raiders offense that has been terrible. I don't know, no matter how good you feel about Shedeur Sanders, the Raiders defense is average. It's a spot where, again, like, are the Raiders lose here? Are we starting to talk about them in the range of the Titans? Could we see Kenny Pickett in this game? Because I know a lot of people have been saying we got to pull Geno out, but maybe they don't realize who's behind. And Matt, I always know you make the joke about launching a game into the sun, but I have a better idea. Let's just cancel this game and put a concert in the stadium.
I mean, it's brutal, man. I will say this. I weirdly ended up on a bet in this game, and it was just on Shedeur Sanders, and mainly just out of the you can't be that bad. I think, I mean, they opened him at 157.5 on his passing total. And it's like, listen, you're indoors in a dome against a bad team. If you can't throw for 158 yards, then, I don't know what to tell you. I did see an interesting thread, and I do remember who this was from. And this was from Luke McCown. And Noops, it kind of like gave me some perspective here a little bit, which made me feel a little bit better even about the bet on the over 157 for Shedeur, which was, he was like, hey guys, former 4th round draft pick here, lifelong backup in the NFL. I don't know if y'all realize what the life of a backup quarterback actually is. And it's a super long thread. I will give you the cliff notes here, which is basically you take 0 reps with the ones ever. Like you never, like 0. And not only that, you're most of the time running the scout team, which means you're actually running plays that aren't even your own team's plays. Like the plays you're running in practice are the other team's plays. You're not even running your own team's plays. And he's like, so add in the fact that it's a rookie, so he hadn't even been in the league very long and all that. And so now you throw him in, and it's like, yeah, he's going to look bad. He's going to look awful. He doesn't know. The offensive line doesn't know his cadence. The him and the receivers have 0 rapport. He doesn't throw to them ever in practice and all this. And he's basically like, I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders is going to come out and look exponentially better, but I can tell you, getting at least a week where you're going to start, and like the offensive line knows how you call out signals and stuff, and the receivers have at least caught passes from you and stuff like that, is can only be a bonus, right? And I was like, it's a pretty insightful thing, because I guess as me, I know it's going to shock y'all, I've never played in the NFL. I don't really know, that part of the practice where he's like, literally you get 0 run, like none, like not a single snap in practice with the ones. And most of the time you are running plays that aren't even your team's plays. You're running the other team's plays and stuff. So he's like, it's an incredibly difficult situation for a rookie to be thrown in to a game in the middle of a game. And it's like, you're almost, you're dead on arrival. And so it made a lot of sense where people were like, oh, he looked awful. Well, that might be the reason why.
It does. It makes a ton of sense. And I love stuff like that from players. People really don't realize what's expected of these guys and what the situation is, again, walking in. I mean, just think about what you said about Cadence. You've never taken a snap from this center. These guys have no idea how you're going to try to get him the ball. So I'm sure he'll be better this week. And again, it's impossible to be worse than Dylan Gabriel was. So I'm sure the Browns offense will be slightly better. I actually played some Shedeur Sanders completions over, just worried they're not going to push the ball down the field enough to get the yards. But I agree. Against this Raiders defense, he's definitely got a shot to go over some of these numbers.
Atlanta Falcons are on the road at the New Orleans Saints as 1.5 to 2 point dogs. Yes, that is because we are done with Michael Penix for the season. Unfortunately, has to have that ACL reconstructed. So it is the Kirk Cousins show, and I got a push notification. Drake London will remain out for this game for Atlanta as well. So you're going into this on the road against a Saints team where, look, Tyler Shuck, if I thought fine, in a second start and whatever. I mean, it's not a hugely pedigreed dude or anything. So, I mean, I don't know what our expectations are, but I thought it was okay for him. 40 and a half point total in this one, Noops. And so, I guess we just have to decide in something like this where if we think there's any juice whatsoever left in Kirk Cousins, then this line is wildly off. But this line is predicated on what we've seen from Kirk Cousins over the last 5 times we've watched him, which looks like he's just complete dust. And so if you think that Kirk Cousins has a game left in him and whatever, and knowing he's going to be the starter and he gets all jacked up for a game or something, then this line is off. But I mean, we have no evidence to think that that's the case.
I think I'd agree with you if Drake London was playing, but without him, I'm just worried there's not enough pass catching talent on Atlanta to really make a difference. I think one of the jarring stats I saw this week was their yards per rush without Drake London drops almost 1.5 yards per rush because defenses know without him, let's just stack the box, get ready for Bijan or even Algier. And, if Darnell Mooney beats us, we'll go down. If one of these guys really gets past us, Kyle Pitts has had a better season, but again, still not somebody who's going to stretch the field. So, I mean, I'm glad that you put this game right next to Cleveland and Las Vegas because this might even be just a grosser game to watch. Cleveland, Las Vegas, at least we have some questions. Here it's just, God, Kirk Cousins, we got to watch that for a couple hours. I agree that Shuck hasn't been bad, but I don't see anything to be excited about there. I don't think if you're the Saints, you're thinking to yourself, we don't need to draft a quarterback next year. You're definitely still thinking that way. But at the end of the day, I think we should be betting the Saints. This Atlanta Falcons defense has fallen off an absolute cliff over the last 3 or 4 weeks. They are nowhere near the dominant unit that we saw for the first 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season. So I think, again, this is just kind of a mess of a football game, lean towards the Saints, but I'm more than happy to not have to think about it.
Yeah, you can get at this Falcons team on the ground too. And so another dude where we go, if there's any juice left in the tank, if there's anything left in Kamara's tank, this would be the spot, probably going to get the opportunity. They're probably going to go out on a limb and say they're not going to let Shuck throw it 45 times. So I'm going to assume that they're at least going to have Kamara at least give it a go and see if he can get it rocking and rolling. I mean, there's one thing I maybe a live betting angle in this thing just could be if Kamara looks just completely like garbage, Neal will probably get a decent amount of carries in this game as it is anyway. They've been trying to work him in a little bit more as the kind of clear successor there, I think, to Kamara. But again, if Kamara can't get anything going, maybe Neal gets some additional carries or something. But in order to do that, you know what? You have to watch the game. And then so I'm going to wish that on you. So maybe just let that one go. Philadelphia Eagles on the road at the Dallas Cowboys. This is 3.5 in favor of Philadelphia, 47.5 the prevailing total. Noops, this was 3.5 everywhere, and those got bought up at a lot of the places, and we're down to the 3 here. Dallas getting some love in the market.
I'm really surprised by that. This Eagles team, again, I know they don't look fantastic. We've got Nick Sirianni doing goofy stuff, like going for it on 4th and whatever, instead of punting the ball in a game where you're just trying to play against the clock. We've got A.J. Brown giving weird press conferences and all sorts of stuff like that. But they continue to win football games. The Eagles' defense has been spectacular. And as good as Dallas's offense have been, they've only played one other top 10 off defense, and that was the Denver Broncos. They struggled in that game, and I think this is a spot where this Eagles team been playing really well here. I don't get it. I don't know why people are buying up this Cowboys line. I know they're healthy, and with Pickens again and CeeDee Lamb, there's some points there. The running backs look like they've got a little bit of life of them. The defense looks solid, but again, it was last week against the Raiders. We're talking about the Raiders here, for God's sake. And not that the Eagles offensive line is as good as it's been the last couple seasons, but I just think this is a big step up in competition for a Cowboys team that's, again, getting a lot of credit for beating the Raiders, losing to the Cardinals by 10, getting basically throttled by the Broncos, beating up on a Commanders team that is totally checked out. I don't understand why everyone's all on Dallas. I'm just going to keep waiting. At some point, I'll take a cheap 3 on the Eagles, or maybe I'll get lucky enough to get 2.5.
Yeah, I laid the 3. I mean, I feel much better about it today that it looks like they're only going to be down 1 offensive lineman in this game, which makes me feel much, much better, as it was questionable. It could be 3 earlier in the week, but that has me feeling a little bit more warm and fuzzy in this. I will say I'm willing to be proven wrong, though, on Dallas, because one of the things is the trade deadline came and then Dallas went on bye. And so we didn't see the fruits of the trade deadline for them until this past week. Now, did we even learn anything in that game? I don't know. It certainly looked like the defense was a little bit better, and I don't see how it couldn't be, considering they did add, good pieces to the defensive side of the ball. So I'm willing to be proven wrong in this one. That being said, they are going up against a legit, let's just call the Eagles right now are basically they're like the pro version of the Broncos, right? They're the extra subscription version. They're the ESPN Plus to the ESPN or whatever. It's a very, very, very good defense, but at least there's some upside to the offense, whereas there's really none on the Denver side of things. They still have Saquon Barkley, and even if AJ Brown doesn't want to go catch footballs, they still have Devontae Smith. I mean, there is. It's not like they're devoid of talent here, but on the defensive side, all of these stats that we quote to you guys week after week after week. EPA, success rate, EPA per drive, EPA, early down EPAs, pass EPA, rush EPA, whatever. Over the last month of the season, the Eagles are inside the top 5 in every single one of those categories on the defensive side of the ball. They have not given up one explosive run in the last month of the season. Not one single run gets classified as explosive over the last month of the season. This defense is playing at a super elite level, and I just don't know if the Cowboys and don't get me wrong, great wide receiver duo that they've got there as well. Just don't know if they come out and are flying all over the place like they did against a putrid Raiders team. So I laid the 3 as well. That being said, I am willing to be proven wrong, because I do think there is a world that exists where this Dallas defense is, I'm not saying good, but league average. And that changes the conversation with the team, because offense is definitely good. And so if they have an average defense as opposed to a poor defense, I might have to change how I think about this Cowboys team at large here.
You're right. Again, moving from being the second worst defense in the league to average is a huge step up and would make a big difference here. Again, if the Cowboys can find a way to sort of turn this into what the last couple Eagles games have looked like, just total slugfest. I mean, 10-7, 16-9. We're talking Big Ten 90s football scores. It's unbelievable what some of these games look like. At the end of the game, they do have probably the 2 best receivers, arguably, in the game, honestly, with Lamb and Pickens here. So if you get down to the end of the game, it's 1 possession. I could see the Cowboys maybe surprising here, but I'm just not ready for that. I'm not ready to say that, again, even that the offense is good enough to play against this Eagles defense, and maybe reacting a little too much to what we just saw on Thursday night. What we've seen over the last couple weeks, though, good defenses are finally starting to beat good offenses after years of good offenses winning that battle. So I'm just, again, I feel great about the Eagles. And like you've been saying, let's see if we get proven wrong.
Yeah. That's I think one of the best things about a good better, right? Is just, if you're wrong, you're wrong. And then you learn something and you move on from it. I definitely don't know it all. And that's a very big, very big thing for me that I think that's helped with some of the success over the years, where if I have to adjust a ton on this Dallas team, then I'm willing to do it, because they went out and made acquisitions at the trade deadline on the defensive side. I have 1 week of sample size. I don't know if that translates against a better team. Maybe it was just the product of what we saw against the Raiders, because they're god awful, but I don't know. Maybe it is. Sunday night football brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Tampa Bay Bucks and the LA Rams. This is 6.5, 7 in favor of the Rams at home over the Bucks. 49.5 is our total here in this one. Noops, as we start to handicap this one, we start with the injury report, which is at least somewhat interesting for Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin is going to go. Hassan Reddick will not, and neither will Bucky Irving. Again, just a wild deal with this whole Bucky Irving thing. And now going to come out in his 7th week of being out for this team. Just wild that they didn't put him on IR, but he is not going to be out there for them. I think it matters a little bit because I think he is definitely better than Sean Tucker and Rashad White and all that stuff like that. But getting Godwin back does give me a little bit of pause because I wonder if I'm artificially inflating this team in my mind based off of what Chris Godwin used to be. And this, what I used to think about Chris Godwin and this unbelievable slot receiver that caught every single ball. I mean, it's a couple major injuries for him later here, Noops. And now another one that took him out for several weeks. And this being the first game back, I think my brain wants me to think like, oh, Chris Godwin's going to be out there. But it might be more like, oh, Chris Godwin's out there.
Yeah, it's a spot where, it's going to be the last really tough week for what has been a brutal start to the season for the Buccaneers. Playing in a division that's been really bad. You look at their schedule at Atlanta while the Falcons were still good, at Houston, did play the Jets, but then Philadelphia, Seattle, San Francisco, Detroit. Yes, they got the Saints, but then the Patriots, Buffalo, and now the Rams. Finally, next week, they get into the easier part of their schedule. Cardinals, Saints, Falcons, again, were beat up. Carolina twice and at Miami. So I think, again, if you're Tampa Bay, this is just let's get through this week. And again, still leading the division here, still in good shape despite just a brutal set of injuries. And again, the wide receivers, Chris Godwin, we know even if he's playing, he's not 100%. We saw Ibuka play last week. He's questionable, but kind of the same rhythm he had last week, questionable in a few, limited in a few practices. Do expect him to play. And I think there is a small chance, again, if Ibuka can play, we get a decent game out of Sean Tucker and Rashad White, and Baker, again, reaches into his bag and pulls out a little bit of the magic that we've seen from him in some of these big games. Maybe there's a chance they keep this game close or win it. But, I mean, the Rams are arguably the best team in the NFL at this point. Top 3 offense, top 3 defense, really totally in control of what they have going on. And it's not like a game in LA normally where you'd have a lot of fans from the other team. With all due respect to Bucs fans, I'm not expecting this to be a flip stadium like we've seen in a couple other games. So I kind of get why this spread is where it is at 6.5, 6. Probably still a little too high, but I'm just not ready to take the Buccaneers because it's just absolutely brutal for them. Missing their left guard and left tackle Trenton Wirfs is questionable. Again, limited in practice, but if he goes out, I don't know how you trust Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Noops, this is one of those weird games where you sit here and you start to you look and you compare these teams, and I have the Rams as number 1 in my power ratings. Like I believe that they are the best team in the NFL currently constructed. The numbers tell you that pretty much. I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, they're in the top 5 in just about everything that we care about. On the defensive side of the ball, they're in the top 7 or 8 in just about everything that we care about as well. You got a really good quarterback. You have 2 good receivers. You got a good running back. I mean, I'm going what is stopping me from pulling the trigger here on all of this? And we've seen the Baker magic. We've seen whatever. In the back of my mind, Chris Godwin can still play football, and I think that matters. Maybe he can't, and then it won't matter. And not having Bucky Irving, who's a much more dynamic player than you have with some of these the other guys that they're going to be rolling out there. I think it's an unfortunate deal of a Rams or pass, but I haven't gotten there. That said, if for some strange reason this thing takes a run, and if it gets on the other side of 7, Noops, I think just out of principle, I might have to play the Buck. If this is 7.5 by the time this thing kicks, because there are 7s already out there in the market. If this gets to 7.5, I have to play the Bucks.
I agree, because again, I think that back door is going to be wide open with as good as the wide receivers can be. Igbuka's awesome, and if Goodwin can be okay, you've still got Sterling Shepard there. You've got some talent in the passing games. Tez Johnson has been really solid, and again, we've seen Baker at the end of these games be able to score late and push the ball down the field. So even if the Rams are up by 14 going into that last drive, it's not like Tampa Bay is going to play to lose the game. They're going to keep pushing there. So I agree. If it continues to stretch out, I might have to be talking to some Buccaneers as well. Again, might just wait and grab something live.
Is there where does the passing? Okay, so we know. Let's just live in a world where Chris Godwin is not Chris Godwin. He's just kind of out there and doing whatever. Is it Tez Johnson? Is it Cade Otton? Is it whatever? Because, I mean, we know Baker's going to sling it. I mean, like, whether there's efficiency there or not, we can't really say. But where does the production go?
Yeah, again, I think we're going to see Egbuka will be top of the list as he's been all year. If you look at some of the other runs,
Bet $5,
has been getting
get $300 in bonus bets,
Sterling
win
Shepard has
or
just been a really
lose.
solid player
With
for
Bet
this team. He's second on the team in
365
targets,
Sportsbook.
has been healthy basically
Gambling
every
problem?
week and is
Call
out there.
1-800-GAMBLER,
I think
21
Godwin
plus
maybe
only.
will take a little
T
bit of
and
those
C's
Shepard
apply.
targets.
In app
Shepard's a
only.
little bit more of a slot guy, and then we'll have Johnson and Egbuka on the outside.
Yeah, it is just like, it's an interesting matchup. I think this would solidify my position on the Rams being the number one team in the NFL. If they're able to go out and throttle this Bucs team, I think I would feel very comfortable doing that. But here's the thing: it's still a game to evaluate, because the Bucs are going to make the playoffs because that division's terrible. And so, if you get in the tournament, Noops, you can still. Step one is get in the tournament, and then what happens from there? Mike Evans is still to come back at some point. Godwin, you would think, would ramp up and get better. We assume Bucky Irving is coming back at some point. Who knows? We thought that for the last 5 weeks that he was going to come back. But so I think that seeing what this Bucs team looks like today as to what the potential could be here in 3 or 4 weeks is also fairly interesting.
It really is, and I agree with you. I wouldn't take whatever opinion you have of Tampa Bay this week or even the next couple weeks into the playoffs. Things can get wildly different once they get healthy. Again, have that offensive line all good. Get Hassan Reddick and Jamal Dean back on the defense. Get Godwin kind of up to speed and Bucky Irving back. It suddenly becomes a really dangerous team, the team that everyone before the season was talking about as a dark horse.
Yeah, I might play me a little Cade Otton before it's all said and done. I can see him being the kind of security blanket type stuff there for Baker, and considering this Rams front has been getting pressure as well on quarterbacks, and seems like maybe he's the guy that has been the beneficiary of just kind of some of the dump offs or whatever. So probably some Cade Otton there.
Makes sense
for me. Guys, as always, everything to do absolutely free. Please hit that subscribe button down below. Let us know in the comment section what your favorite play of the week is. If you're still in Survivor, good on you. You have plenty of awesome options this week. This is not the week to get cute. Like, you've got 4 really, really solid options this week. So don't see any reason to go crazy here in this one. So go in and advance to next week, and then we can start talking about this thing getting pretty real. You moved to week 13. Things are definitely getting real over there in Survivor. For Noops, I am Matt. Good luck on all your week 12 bets.
Bet $5, get $300 in bonus bets, win or lose, with Bet 365 Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus only. T and C's apply. In app only.